Imagine you're running a small business in Britain. You've got your staff rota sorted, your payroll ticking along, your cups of tea on the boil, and then, without warning, someone kicks your front door in with a warrant, demands your documents, and tells you they have the legal right to use reasonable force. No, that's not a scene from a crime drama. That is Angela Rayner's parting gift to British employers, and it is very much the law of the land right now. Welcome back to British Reform. Strap in, because this one is something else. So here's the story. Angela Rayner, former Deputy Prime Minister, current leadership hopeful in waiting, perpetual thorn in Keir Starmer's side, spent years designing the Employment Rights Act. Her crown jewel within it was the Fair Work Agency, which officially launched this month. And when she promised it would have real teeth, she was not being metaphorical. This agency has been handed powers under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act to enter business premises, conduct unannounced inspections, search individuals, seize materials, and yes, arrest people and use what the government delightfully describes as reasonable force. It has been given a budget of over £60 million a year, more than 12 million higher than the bodies it replaced, and it covers everything from minimum wage enforcement to modern slavery. That is not a watchdog. That is a Rottweiler in a high-vis jacket with a warrant card. Now, you might be thinking, surely targeting rogue employers who underpay workers and exploit staff is a good thing? And look, in theory, yes, nobody is defending the dodgy bosses who steal wages and ignore basic rights. But here's where it gets interesting. And here's where Keir Starmer starts looking very uncomfortable. Because businesses across Britain are absolutely furious. The Institute of Directors flagged that the Fair Work Agency already had broader powers than any enforcement body before it, and that's before you even get to the arrest powers. The Federation of Small Businesses warned that this legislation pushes firms into what they called a thicket of regulation that undermines the government's own stated goal of economic growth. The chairman of Marks & Spencer, Archer Norman, called the whole Employment Rights Act a political indulgence that Britain simply cannot afford right now, and said Starmer had a golden opportunity to ditch it after Rayner left. He didn't take it, and now here we are. And this is the real tension at the heart of Labour's existential crisis, isn't it? Starmer wants to look pro-business. He needs investment. He needs growth numbers. He desperately needs something to point to other than stagnation and U-turns. But Rayner's legislation, built when Labour was in opposition and needed the unions on side, is now the law, and it is costing businesses an estimated £5 billion a year to implement. £5 billion. That is not a rounding error. That is a structural drag on the economy dressed up as progressive reform. And here's where it gets even messier. Starmer already blinked on part of this. The original manifesto pledge was day one unfair dismissal rights for workers, a genuinely radical commitment. Under pressure from the House of Lords and business groups, that got quietly watered down to 6 months. Rayner, who had by then resigned over her tax affairs, was reportedly furious. She had warned against diluting the legislation just weeks before the U-turn. Unions called it a betrayal. Labour's left flank seethed, and Starmer sat there trying to look like everything was fine, which is basically his default setting. So you have a government that has upset businesses by going too far, upset unions by not going far enough, handed enforcement powers to an agency that employers are comparing to a jobs police, and managed to antagonize the woman who built the whole thing in the first place. A woman who, by the way, is increasingly being talked about as a future Labour leader. That is a remarkable achievement in irritating everyone simultaneously. Let's zoom in on the pub and hospitality sector specifically, because this is where it gets almost comedic if it weren't so damaging. Under the Employment Rights Act, employers are now required to take all reasonable steps to protect staff from third-party harassment, including remarks made by customers in a pub. So the landlord is now legally responsible for what drunk people say to the bar staff on a Friday night. Critics have already started joking about banter bouncers patrolling pub gardens and codes of conduct pinned to every wall. The compliance costs alone could tip businesses that are already on the edge over into closure. And with the Fair Work Agency having unannounced inspection powers, the pressure is relentless. The broader picture here is one of a Labour government that is being pulled in every direction at once. The unions want the full-fat original version of the reforms. Businesses want a significant rollback. Rayner wants her legacy protected. Starmer wants to survive the local elections in May without his poll numbers collapsing further. And meanwhile, ordinary workers and small business owners, the people this legislation supposedly exists to serve, are stuck in the middle of a labor civil war being fought through employment law. The Fair Work Agency is live, the powers are real, and the backlash is building. Whether Starmer has the nerve to push back against Rayner's blueprint or whether he keeps getting pulled along by it is going to define the next phase of his premiership. Right now, it looks less like a government in control of its agenda and more like a government clinging to the side of a bus it never quite learned how to drive. If you think British workers and businesses deserve better than this chaos, you know what to do. Smash that like button, subscribe to British Reform, and share this with someone who needs to see what Labour is actually doing. We'll see you in the next one.